In 1921, Lewis Laws became the warden at Sing Sing Prison in New York State. No prison was tougher than Sing Sing during that time. But when Warden Laws retired some 20 years later, that prison had become a humanitarian institution. Those who studied the system said credit for the change belonged to Laws. But when he was asked about the transformation, here's what he said: "I owe it all to my wonderful wife, Catherine, who is buried outside the prison walls." Catherine Lewis was a young mother with 3 small children, with her husband, and when he became warden. Everybody warned her from the beginning that she should never set foot inside the prison walls. But that didn't stop Catherine. When the first prison basketball game was held, she went, walking into the gym with her 3 kids, and she sat in the stands with the inmates. Her attitude was, "My husband and I are going to take care of these men, and I believe they will take care of me. I don't have to worry." She insisted on getting acquainted with them and their records. She discovered one convicted murderer who was blind, so she paid him a visit. Holding his hand in hers, she said, "Do you read Braille?" "What's Braille?" he asked. Then she taught him how to read. Later, Catherine found a deaf mute in prison. She went to school to learn how to use sign language. Many said that Catherine Laws was the body of Jesus that came alive again in Sing Sing from 1921 to 1937. Then she was killed in a car accident. The next morning, Lewis Laws didn't come to work, so the acting warden took his place. It seemed almost instantly that the prison knew something was wrong. The following day, her body was resting in a casket in her home, 3/4 of a mile away from the prison. As the acting warden took his early morning walk, he was shocked to see a large crowd of the toughest, hardest-looking criminals gathered like a herd at the main gate. He came closer and noted tears of grief and sadness. He knew how much they loved Catherine. He turned and faced the men. "All right, men, you can go. Just be sure and check in tonight." Then he opened the gate, and a parade of criminals walked without a guard the 3/4 of a mile to stand in line to pay their final respects to Catherine Lewis. And every one of them checked back in. Every one. They learned the commandment of love as practiced by Catherine. Jesus gives us a new commandment to love one another. But how is this commandment new? Early in his ministry, a Pharisee came up to Jesus and asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" Jesus responded, "It is to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself." In what way, then, does this new love commandment move beyond the earlier love commandment? It differs because Jesus uses himself as the model of love. He says, "Love one another as I have loved you." If Jesus is the model for living, then the stakes of loving are raised much higher because Jesus loved selflessly, completely, and universally. What Jesus is asking us to do in this new commandment is to love in a way that goes beyond normal human loving. Most of us try to love the people in our lives who deserve our love. But Jesus loved people who did not deserve his love. He loved Peter, who denied him. He loved the criminal who hung on the cross next to him. He loved the woman who was caught in adultery. Most of us in our lives try to forgive people if they are sorry and if they ask for our forgiveness. But Jesus forgave those who crucified him, even as they drove the nails through his hands and his feet. All of us try to love the people who belong to us, our children, our family, and our friends, but Jesus loved the tax collector, the leper, and the prostitute. Given our human nature, we think that we should hold on to love, to preserve it. But love only has power when we let it go and let it flow out. It is then that it can make its effect upon others in our midst. We tend to think we should limit love to only certain groups, to our family and friends, to those who think and act like us, to those who we know and with whom we are familiar. But if we are to love as Jesus has loved us, we must push beyond the limits which we place on love. For who did Jesus love? For whom did Jesus give his life? Jesus did not give his life only for his mother and his disciples, only for the Jews and the poor, or for those who were good. Jesus gave his life for everyone, for all of humanity. If we are to love as he loved us, then we must love in a way which is wider and deeper than the way to which we are inclined. We must push beyond whatever limits we place on love and join ourselves with others who love, so the kingdom of God can be built up. It is not easy to follow Jesus' new commandment of love, because to love as Jesus loved is to adopt a love that is deep, radical, and extreme. Our first response to Jesus' new command could be frustration. How can anyone love this way? It is impractical. It is impossible. But the truth about Jesus' new commandment is this: it is not only a demand, it is a gift. To love as Jesus loved is to do something that we cannot do on our own, by our own willpower. Whenever we are able to love as Jesus loved, we know that it is through God's grace. When we are able to forgive an enemy, to reach out and touch a leper, to show graciousness to those who do not deserve it, we know that God is working in us and through us. This makes us both humble and blessed. All people of goodwill should be able to say at their deathbed, "I loved my children, I was faithful to my friends, I was fair to people who were fair to me." To say those things is to admit that you have lived your life as a good, moral person. But my hope is that many of us here will be able to say more than when our lives come to an end. When we look back on the things we have done, my hope is that we will be able to remember when we forgave someone who hurt us deeply, when we made a difference in the life of someone we barely knew, when we showed mercy to those who have no right to expect it. To remember such actions is to recognize that we loved as Jesus loved, and God worked through us. Such actions should give us peace and joy, because they would indicate that we lived our lives not simply just as a good moral person, but as disciples of Jesus. In the Eucharist, we see how practical Christ's love is for us. He laid down his life for us in an outpouring of love, and he gives us the strength to follow his example. Bolstered with Jesus' very strength in Holy Communion, let's make our first priority every day to love one another as Christ has loved us. Let's beg him to set our hearts on fire with love and to give us the strength to love others as he has loved us to the end.